My sister Brooke was the daughter my parents actually wanted. I figured that out when I was 9 years old, sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal alone, while my parents drove her to a dance showcase 3 towns over. They forgot to leave me lunch money. They forgot to tell me they'd be gone until dinner. What they didn't forget was the video camera, the bouquet of roses, and the reservation at her favorite Italian restaurant afterward. I'm Rachel, and for the next 20 years, I was the background noise in my own family. Growing up, Brooke was everything my parents could point to at dinner parties. She was the dancer, the honors student, the one who lit up a room. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the one my mother would introduce as our other daughter with a pause just long enough to make me feel the weight of that word, other. I learned early that in our house, there was a star and there was a stagehand. I set the table, kept my grades up, didn't cause problems, and watched every spotlight in the room follow my sister like it was hardwired to find her. My parents weren't cruel people. That's the part that took me years to untangle. They never screamed at me. They never told me I wasn't loved. They were just absent from me in a way that was so consistent, so practiced, that it started to feel like the natural order of things. Brooke needed more, they gave more. I needed less, they gave less. Except I didn't need less. I just learned to stop asking. The birthday thing started small. When I turned 10, my parents threw Brooke a surprise Sweet 16 the same weekend. I understood. A Sweet 16 is a big deal. My little birthday could wait, they said. We'll do something special next week. Next week came and went. We ordered pizza on a Tuesday, and my dad said happy birthday with his eyes still on the television. I told myself it was fine. I told myself a lot of things back then just to get through the week. By the time I was 13, I had stopped expecting anything. I would see the calendar on the refrigerator, see my birthday circled in my own handwriting, because I was the one who had written it there hoping someone would notice. And I would watch the days approach and pass like weather. My mother would sometimes remember in the evening after dinner and hand me a card she'd clearly grabbed from the drugstore that afternoon. The envelope would still have the price sticker on it. I peeled them off and kept the cards anyway in a shoebox under my bed because they were proof that I existed. Brooke, meanwhile, had themed parties. At 17, my parents rented out the back room of a restaurant for her and her 40 closest friends. They were custom centerpieces, a photo booth, a cake with her face on it in edible ink. I sat in the corner eating shrimp cocktail and smiled when my aunt asked me if I was having fun. I said yes. It was easier than the truth. Here's what no one tells you about growing up invisible in your own family. You don't explode. You adapt. You become exceptionally good at taking care of yourself because no one else is going to do it. By 16, I was doing my own laundry, packing my own lunches, researching high school extracurriculars that would look good on college applications because I understood, somewhere deep and practical in my chest, that I was going to have to build my own future without a net. My parents were funding Brooke's dance training, her competition travel, her private coaching. I applied for every scholarship I could find and didn't tell anyone. I got into state on a merit scholarship. Full tuition. My parents said congratulations at breakfast and then spent the rest of the meal talking about Brooke's upcoming regional competition. I drove myself to orientation in August with my car packed and my mother waving from the porch. She asked me to text when I arrived. I did. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. 3 hours later, she posted a 15-photo slideshow on Facebook about Brooke's newest choreography. College was the first place I ever felt like myself. Without the constant comparison, without being measured against someone else's shine, I had room to figure out who I actually was. I studied accounting. I know, not glamorous. But I was good with numbers in a way that felt solid in mine, and there was something deeply satisfying about a balance sheet that told the truth. Every figure accounted for, every discrepancy findable, nothing hidden. I graduated in 4 years with honors and a job offer from a mid-sized financial firm 2 states away. My parents came to graduation. My mother cried and said she was proud of me, and I stood in my cap and gown and felt something complicated and sad move through me, because it was the most she had said in years, and I didn't know what to do with it anymore. My father shook my hand. Brooke was at a dance workshop and sent a text that said, "Congrats, sis," with a party popper emoji. The job was good, the city was better. I rented a one-bedroom apartment and spent the first Saturday just walking around the neighborhood, getting coffee, sitting by the river, feeling the particular quiet of a life that was entirely my own. No one in that city knew me as the other daughter. No one looked past me to see who was standing behind me. I was just Rachel. And Rachel, it turned out, was someone I genuinely liked. I worked hard, I always had. But without the weight of being invisible at home, the work felt different, purposeful, energizing. Within 2 years, I was promoted to senior associate. My manager, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia who had a framed needlepoint in her office that said, "Accurate is a compliment," told me I had instincts that couldn't be taught. I thanked her and went back to my desk and quietly let that sentence settle into some hollow place I didn't know I still had. I called home every few weeks. The conversations followed a pattern I could have scripted. My mother would update me on Brooke, a new routine, a new instructor, a showcase coming up. My father would ask if I was eating enough. I would say yes, tell them work was going well, and they would say "That's great, honey," before transitioning back to Brooke. I learned to keep the calls short. I also learned, somewhere in my late 20s, to stop hoping they would change. Acceptance isn't the same as forgiveness, and it isn't the same as giving up. It's just finally seeing something clearly after years of squinting. The real shift came when I was 29. My firm had a strong year, a very strong year, and the bonuses reflected it. Mine was significant, more than I had ever received at one time. I sat with that number for a week before I did anything, just turning it over in my mind, thinking about what it meant that I'd gotten here by myself, quietly, without anyone at home tracking my progress or cheering at my milestones. I had been looking at properties in a small mountain community about 4 hours from the city. It started as something idle, a search I'd open on slow Sunday afternoons, the way people scroll through travel photos of places they'll probably never go. But the looking became more specific, more deliberate. There was a particular kind of cabin in that area, set back in the trees with a creek view and a covered porch, that kept appearing in my searches. Not a mansion, not a statement, just a place that was entirely, quietly mine. I started running the numbers. With my bonus, my savings, and the mortgage rate I'd been pre-approved for, it was possible. More than possible. I called a real estate agent named Dana in late February and told her what I was looking for. She sent me listings that week. I drove up on a Saturday and looked at 3 properties. The second one, a 3-bedroom cedar cabin with a wide creek view and a porch that caught the afternoon light, made me stand still in the middle of the living room for a long moment with my hand on the doorframe. I made an offer the following Monday. My birthday is in April. It has always been in April, circled in my own handwriting on every calendar I have ever owned. A date that arrives each year with the quiet certainty of a person who has given up, hoping to be surprised. I turned 31 on a Thursday. My parents called at 7 in the evening after dinner and sang happy birthday in the rushed, slightly off-key way that told me they had just remembered. My mother asked if I was doing anything special. I said not really. She said we should do dinner sometime soon. I said sure. We hung up. Brooke didn't call. What I did not tell them was that I had signed the closing documents on the cabin at 2 o'clock that afternoon, sitting at a conference table across from Dana and the sellers, with a pen that felt heavier and more significant than anything I had ever held. The sellers were a retired couple who said they hoped someone would love it the way they had. I told them I thought I would. I drove up the following weekend to see it as mine for the first time. I brought coffee in a thermos and arrived early enough to sit on the porch while the fog was still on the creek. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I sat there for an hour in the quiet and felt something I didn't have a clean word for. Not triumph, exactly, and not sadness, though both were somewhere nearby. Something more like completion. I didn't post anything for 2 months. I went up on weekends and fixed small things, bought furniture slowly and deliberately, learned which boards on the back porch needed replacing. I started a container garden. I made friends with a neighbor down the road named Cliff who was retired and grew tomatoes and would stop by sometimes to talk about nothing in particular for 20 minutes before wandering back home. It was a good life, a full one, and it had nothing to do with anyone's approval. The post was not premeditated. I want to be clear about that. I was sitting on my porch one evening in June with my coffee, watching the light move on the creek, and I took a few photos the way I sometimes do. Just for myself. Just because something is beautiful and you want to hold it a moment longer. I posted 3 of them to my personal Instagram with no caption except the location tag. That was it. I didn't think about who would see them. My mother saw them first. She called within the hour. I was still on the porch. I answered because I always answered. "Is that a cabin?" she said. I told her it was. "Whose is it?" "Mine," I said. There was a silence on the line that had several layers to it. Then she said, "What do you mean, yours?" I explained calmly that I had purchased it in April, that it was about 4 hours from my apartment, that it had 3 bedrooms and a creek view, and I was very happy with it. "Rachel." Her voice shifted into something I recognized, the tone she used when she felt I had done something that required a family discussion. "Why didn't you tell us?" Something like this. "You should have talked to us first." I thought about that for a moment. About all the birthdays circled in my own handwriting. About the price stickers on the drugstore cards. About graduation and the thumbs up emoji and every meal where the conversation moved past me like I was furniture. I thought about the way she had phrased it, "You should have talked to us first," as though my financial decisions were a family matter that required their input. I told her very gently that I hadn't mentioned it because it was my money and my decision and I hadn't needed anyone's advice. She said she just meant they could have helped. I asked how. She didn't have an answer for that. My father called an hour later. His approach was different, more bewildered than indignant, like a man trying to find his footing on unexpected terrain. He said he didn't understand why I would make a purchase like that without mentioning it. I said I hadn't realized I was required to. He said that's not what he meant. I still remember the casual shrug. I still remembers very happy. He was quiet for a moment and then said he was glad, and I believed him, and that made the whole thing sadder and more complicated than anger would have been. Brooke texted that night. The text said, "Cute cabin. Must be nice." 2 sentences. No punctuation on the first one. A lot of information in 3 words. Over the next few days, I watched the family dynamic shift in a way I had never seen before. 2 aunts reached out to say how lovely the photos were. My cousin Marcus called to say he was genuinely proud of me and could he visit sometime. An uncle I barely heard from sent a voice memo that was 90 seconds of genuine congratulations, and somewhere in that week, something settled in me permanently. Not anger, not vindication, something quieter. The people who had always seen me were still seeing me. The ones who hadn't, well, they were getting a clear view now whether they were ready for it or not. My mother brought it up again at a family call the following Sunday. She said she had been thinking about it and she felt hurt that I hadn't included them. I let her finish. Then I said something I had been thinking about for a very long time. Long before the cabin existed. Long before the bonus. Long before I had the language to say it cleanly. I still remember the casual shrug, as she handed me $200 and even $200 and Ray Libben, and that I made peace with that. I said I didn't need them to be different than they were, but I also wasn't going to apologize for building a life that made me happy, and I wasn't going to consult anyone about how I spent money I had earned on my own. My mother was quiet. I said I loved her. I meant it. I said I had to go. I did. I drove up to the cabin that weekend and sat on the porch with my thermos and watched the fog lift off the creek, the way it does in the early morning when the light is just starting, and the water catches it in pieces. Cliff came by around 8 and we talked about his tomatoes and whether the summer would be dry. It probably would, he said. I said I'd figure out the irrigation. He said he'd help me. We stood there for a few minutes in the easy quiet of people who don't need to be anything to each other except present. I have spent a long time being someone else's supporting cast, the reliable one, the self-sufficient one, the other daughter. I am not angry about it. Anger requires believing things should have been different, and I am past that. But I am also done being quiet about who I am and what I have built. I signed a contract on my birthday in a conference room with afternoon light coming through the window, and the only person who needed to know that it was the best birthday I had ever had was me. That is more than enough. If any part of this story lives in you, if you have ever been the one who circled your own birthday on a calendar and waited, I want you to know something. The life you build in the quiet, on your own terms, without an audience, is not a consolation prize. It is the whole point. Share your story in the comments. I read every single one.